Hi there YouTube, my name is Pixar Prime 10, and today you and I are going to be looking at another toy from Disney Pixar's latest full-length feature film, Toy Story 4. This is a toy that I was extremely excited to see on toy shelves when Toy Story 4 was first starting to pop up in toy stores. It is none other than Mrs. Potato Head herself. Ever since Toy Story 2, Mrs. Potato Head has been a huge part of the Toy Story movies. And, well, I've never had a version of the character. Well, that's technically not true. I've had this Mrs. Potato Head in my collection for as long as I can remember. In fact, I had it before I even liked Toy Story. But as many of you can tell, it's really not that accurate to the character in the movie. So you can imagine my excitement when I found this on the shelf in Target. Now, while it's not a Toy Story collection version of Mrs. Potato Head, they don't actually make one of those. So I won't have one to go perfectly with my Toy Story collection Mr. Potato Head. One thing that I really like is although it is a Toy Story 4 toy, it is still retaining some of the classic Play School packaging, like the logo for Mrs. Potato Head. And of course we see an image of the character from the movie on the side there. That image continues if we rotate the box around. We see Buzz and Woody standing with Mrs. Potato Head. And on the back of the box we have an image of a little kid playing with Mrs. Potato Head, advertising that she has over 16 pieces. On the other side of the box we actually have a picture of Bo Peep, which I do find a little strange considering this toy doesn't have much to do with Bo Peep, but she was a main character in Toy Story 4, so I guess that makes sense. One thing that's interesting to note is this picture is actually flipped. In the movie, this piece of tape was on her right arm. And on the top of the box we have a really nice picture of the Mr. and Mrs. themselves, which is really nice to look at, especially considering recently we had the passing of the voice of Mr. Potato Head, Don Rickles. But of course his talent and legacy will always live on through the character. But I think I've waited long enough. I'm just as excited as Mr. Potato Head was at the end of Toy Story 1 to get a Mrs. Potato Head. So let's bust her out of this packaging and see what this spud is all about. And here we have Mrs. Potato Head out of her packaging and looking absolutely fantastic. I am so extremely excited to have this. If it looks good here, it's going to look even better on my shelf with Mr. Potato Head. For those of you that are toy collectors, the Potato Heads have to be very familiar to you. Even at a very young age, before I even knew what Toy Story was, I knew what Mr. Potato Head was, and I had a few in my collection. Now, there's always unfortunately been one glaring issue with the Potato Head figures versus the Toy Story movies. The way the Potato Head toys work don't actually reflect how they work in the movies. Obviously, they had to change some things about the toy for the movies so that they could actually move and do the things they needed to do as those characters. The most obvious examples are the fact that in the movies, they have two separate eyes and two separate feet. But obviously, on the Potato Head toys, it's just one solid piece of eyes that comes out, which makes sense. But one day, I would really love to see a Mr. Potato Head or Mrs. Potato Head figure that actually really well represents what we see in the movies where you could take out one eye individually or one foot individually. But aside from that, Mrs. Potato Head is exactly what you would expect from a Potato Head toy. The articulation is basically whatever you need it to do. The arms go up and down, ears can go whatever direction you'd like, and the mouth actually has a new feature where it can slide across the figure, which I actually really like because it sets up for a little bit more dynamic looks. Of course, straight from a quote from Toy Story 3 from Mrs. Potato Head herself, she comes with a bunch of accessories, just as you would expect any other Potato Head toy would. And where else are you going to keep those accessories but in the classic hiding spot, their butt. On top of everything that you see right here, Mrs. Potato Head also comes with an extra nose, an extra mouth, extra eyes, and in case those eyes aren't strong enough, she even comes with a pair of glasses. This has always been the point of Potato Head figures, take their pieces apart, put new ones on, and completely change their look. However, as much fun as that is, I got this Mrs. Potato Head for my collection, so I think I'm going to be sticking with the accessories that make her look like her movie self. Now, it's hard to find anything wrong with the toy as classic and simple as Mrs. Potato Head, but the first problem I had immediately upon opening this was every time I try and move it, this flower falls off of her hat. Now, I don't really know why this flower isn't just permanently part of the hat. It has flowers on top, so it's not like you can make it any less flower-like by taking this off, but it's supposed to just slide on, and every time I slide it on, it wants to fall right off no matter which way I try and put it on. So, in all honesty, I'm probably just going to take some super glue and glue this right on there because I have no intentions of ever needing to take that off again. And it really is part of the character, her flower hat. But in terms of the character from the movie, this toy looks really, really great. From the small pink nose to the big red lips, it looks just like the animation model. The only glaring difference between this and the movie is that she doesn't actually have earrings on her ears. They're just painted on. Now, I haven't had a Mr. Potato Head toy in a very long time. In fact, all the ones I have are from my childhood. But Play School must have changed the way they make these toys. Because here we have the Mrs. Potato Head from 2019, and here we have one of my Mr. Potato Heads from my childhood. And well, there's actually a lot different about these toys. You can see the design of the ear has changed. And most notably, the design of the body has changed. Mrs. Potato Head has a bit more of an oval, while Mr. Potato Head kind of looks more like a bowling pin. And you can see the old Mr. Potato Head is a lot wider. Something that's also very interesting is the fact that on the new models, they've added an extra hole for arms. I don't know if this is specific to the Toy Story 4 Mrs. Potato Head, or if they do that on all Potato Head toys now. As well as on the back, they've added 2 holes, one on the door where you can store stuff, and one right above it. Not really sure what you would want to put back there. Maybe a mouth or a nose? I guess it is extra storage, but it doesn't really make much sense. And there's even an extra one hiding up there under the hat. So if you wanted to, you could have 2 faces on one potato head. Now, while these two do look good together, I've never actually loved this potato head that I've had in my collection. It's not entirely movie accurate. That's where this guy comes in, the Toy Story Collection Mr. Potato Head. And while I thought he was going to be too big and wouldn't really look well with my Mrs. Potato Head, I think these two actually look really well together, especially because these are the 2 most movie accurate potato head figures I've ever had. Now, even though I've never reviewed it, one thing that I never loved about the Toy Story Collection Mr. Potato Head is his parts aren't interchangeable with actual potato head parts, which is kind of the whole part of the potato head system. Now, another thing that I've never particularly liked about this Mr. Potato Head is the fact that his feet don't remove. Like I said, it's a big part of the potato heads that all their pieces come off, and you can do whatever you want with them. Well, his feet don't remove because it's part of his feature where he moves and talks to you. And because of that, they tried to make it look a little bit more like the movie where he actually has the pegs that he walks on. So he's actually a little bit taller and does look a little bit taller than Mrs. Potato Head. So it doesn't really look exactly how it should like in the movie, but in terms of being on a shelf together, I think these guys look great together. Now, I do wish that the potato shape was actually a little bit bigger because, well, it doesn't really reflect how it looks in the movie. If you look on the box here, you can see she has a very wide base and the shoes are actually very small. Well, on the toy here, the shoes actually look really big compared to the body, and it doesn't look too natural. Then again, it is just a normal potato head toy. The purse that she comes with is actually one of my favorite accessories, because if you remember in Toy Story 3, this is what she was holding up when she was yelling at Lotso that she has over 30 accessories and she deserves more respect. And I think it's a really great part of the look of this character. Another change to the potato head design is that the mouth hole is actually a little smile now. So, like I said before, you can take it and you can move it across the figure to make it look a little bit different. And of course, just like any potato head figure, you can flip it upside down, and now Mrs. Potato Head is not so happy. But obviously it wouldn't be a potato head toy if you couldn't do stuff like this. Obviously the appeal of Mr. Potato Head is that you can change out parts for whatever you want, but also it means you can get as absolutely wacky and goofy as you want and make really weird looking creations like this. Now, upon saying that I wish that Mrs. Potato Head had more of the shape of the classic potato heads, I realized, well, I have old Mr. Potato Head, so why don't I just take all the pieces off of this new one and put them on the old one? And well, I actually don't like the way it looks, surprisingly. I like the shape of the body a little bit more, because if you look down here, the more round and wide base really does look more movie accurate to the character. But there's stuff about the molding of the old style of potato heads that don't actually look great. Mainly this little lip thing right here. If you look under her mouth, the old potato heads actually had a line molded in here where the mouth would actually very nicely sit. Now, as cool as it looks when a mouth that's in there that's supposed to work with it is in there, it just doesn't look very good for Mrs. Potato Head because this is supposed to be the line of her mouth and now it makes it look like she's got 2 smiles. So I don't actually love this. On top of that, these parts are more designed around this new smaller potato head body. So a lot of the parts like her nose and her eyes are far too small for this big body, and the hat is way too big and comes over the eyes. So while it's a little too small and has holes in strange places, I think I'll be putting the parts back on this body that it actually came with. The main reason I bought this toy is to finally have a movie accurate Mrs. Potato Head in my collection. And well, it is absolutely going to serve just that purpose. No Toy Story collection is complete without Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. And Playskool has done an absolutely fantastic job of representing the character from the movie in this toy. Plus, of course, keeping the classic features of the Potato Head toy line. So with that being said, that's about all I have for you guys for now. So I really hope you all enjoyed this video. I would like to thank you very much for watching. And until I see you again, have yourselves a great day.